Hello again. Hi, guys. So we've quickly changed to education, and this week I suggest that we discuss about writing. Yeah, how do we learn to write? How do we teach writing skills? Let me now start with a quote or a reflection from Hemingway, the great writer. He says that there is no such thing as great writing, there is only great rewriting. So what he means, and he was known for working endlessly in his sentences, in his phrases. So he would rewrite a sentence again and again and again until he found it perfect. Yeah. So for him, the art of writing was no other but rewriting a lot until until satisfied. So there is no such thing as spontaneous good writing. It's a skill that we have to perfect and work on. Now, since we're going to talk about how to develop writing skills in our learners, I want to start with a question for you, yeah, which is, when is the right moment to start teaching writing skills? What do you think? Who will be the first one to answer?
Yeah, I'm gonna risk it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, well, I would say not from day one, but from day 10. I mean, yeah, from the very beginning, because why are you gonna? Because then they can start writing simple sentences, and then as they continue learning, they can build up and have from the good base that they develop, they can expand that and they can improve and progress. I mean, I don't see the reason of waiting. Why should they wait?
Mm-hmm. Okay, when you say the beginning, what is the beginning? The first lesson, the first first class, the first level?
Lesson 10, not lesson 1, lesson 10. No, I mean, like
Lesson 10.
if they're able to construct a minimum sentence where they can communicate verbally, well, they might as well write it.
Yeah.
I mean, communication is in all the skills, so I don't see the reason of waiting.
Okay. Really. All right, fine. So let's be a little bit more specific, because I understand that if we're talking about a B2 student, fine, there is no discussion there. So the discussion is always with the beginners levels, the lowest levels, and with kids. Yeah, so what happens there? When is the right moment? Georgina said lesson 10, more or less, when they start producing language is the right moment to write. She says, why delaying it? Any other opinion on that or experience? What do you think, Steve?
Well, looking at primary school, I mean, I guess I'm not a primary specialist, but at what stage do they teach primary school writing? I mean, Georgina was saying, you're fairly quickly within the curriculum. I mean, even if it's just you're writing your name, but I suppose they start with drawing, and then they move towards writing at some point and labeling the kind of stuff that you would do in a primary curriculum. But this is like animals and colors and things like this, isn't it? But if you're talking about joined up writing composition, I'm not entirely sure at what stage that they introduce it at primary school, but it's fairly soon. It's not right away, but it's fairly soon, I guess. Yeah. So I don't give you an answer, but it's if you're talking from beginners level, they usually look at all the skills more or less at the same time, don't they? Okay, let's get your speaking up to scratch. In Spain, I guess they do a lot of grammar, so I suppose they're doing writing gap fill type things. They look at that first. So they're not really constructing a sentence, but they're completing a sentence. But I'm not entirely sure within the Spanish context when they start doing their own compositions in English. I suppose I should have looked back at when my daughter started to do it. Yeah, but I'm not entirely sure when.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I know. So by the time they have to access university, there is a written test, which is a composition, yeah, which 99% of the students fail to complete. They don't know how to do, yeah. So yes, you're right that it's very soon that they start gap filling. It's true. Whether we can call that writing or not is a different story, yeah. But they start with it, and by the time they get to university, they're supposed to have mastered the skills of writing, but they haven't. They haven't. So the essay, the so-called essay in the access exams for university, is a very big issue for the majority of the Spanish learners, at least Spanish teenagers. Yeah, Bev, you had raised your hand.
Yes, I had, but from the most simplistic point is obviously you can't write in another language unless you actually understand the sounds of the letters. And so many people can speak quite well, for example, in English, but don't know the full sounds of the alphabet.
Why is that? I absolutely agree with you. Why? Let's analyze this, because I think that it's absolutely right. Why, in your opinion, that happens?
I think because it's not taught. I guess I don't know. I mean, I found this with the difference even with kids from the before I taught Chinese children, and they all knew the alphabet. Okay, maybe it was only in the song, but they still knew the alphabet, the sound and the order of the letters. But I have found now, and many adults that I teach don't know the sounds of the letters. So, and that's why even reading, the letter Y is often pronounced as what we know as the letter U, I've noticed. And there's some, and I just think that so many people learning second language don't know the sound. In reverse, I found this, Radmila, with Brits in this country, I'm in the UK at the moment, in Bulgaria.
Mm-hmm.
So many English people will never speak Bulgarian because they don't know the alphabet. So.
Right. No, it's interesting, and I agree that first is sound, absolutely. Yeah, that's the natural order, yeah, and then is anything else.
Because
Now,
writing isn't something that's natural to us as people. Like walking is within us. Everybody will at certain stage stand up and walk. Writing isn't. Writing is learned, and so therefore it has to be taught.
yes, it is true. Yeah, actually, the history of writing is very recent, right? So we write extensively for what 200-300 years, but the history of humanity is obviously much longer. Let me tell you this. Just reflect on this. So, what is a language, right? It's a communicative process. Okay, so as a process, it comes with a certain order. Now, when we learn a new language, first, correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience is that first we listen actively. Yeah, kids do that very well. So right after, they start imitating sound, what Bev was saying. They start imitating sound. Then they start making sense of it. They start understanding. Next, they start communicating verbally, simply in a simple way, then with more complex structures. Then, and only then, they can make sense of something written. So, then and only then, once they have mastered understanding and expressing verbally, they then can read. And when they read, they can do it with the right sound or pronunciation, as Beth was pointing out. And only then, not before then, they can face writing. As Steve was saying, it's much more than just, spelling. It is the art of putting your thoughts in a written way. So only then that happens. With language learning, since we have identified, or scholars have identified these 4 skills, we all know about them, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Yes, there are these 4 skills, and we were taught, and you guys have to teach these skills to learners, yeah? But no one is telling us that we have to teach them simultaneously and from the first day. What happens is that, at least at school, everything is taught in a written way, everything. Not only languages, but also, I don't know, history, and the tests are written, and geography, and everything has to be written down and then reproduced in a written way in an exam. Okay? Now, whether or not this is knowing the subject or knowing the language, that's different. When we start with writing, before being ready to write, what happens is that learners, yeah, you make someone read without them being ready to read. What happens? Have you had that experience? Making a kid read before they're ready to read. What happens there?
They just
Well,
mimic.
they make
They've learned the story. Sorry, Jordan, we both spoke at once. They've learned the story. Many children love a story, and they hear that one of their parents read them it every day, and they remember most of it. So it's memory.
It's when their parents tell them read the story, not when they read it. You're right. If you read before being ready to read, what happens is that you're just mispronouncing. And when you're mispronouncing, it interferes strongly in your pronunciation, in your learning. Yeah. That's why making would you make a 6-year-old read a learner, not a British kid? For instance, a Spanish kid learning English, would you make them read at the age of 6 years?
I think it depends. If I felt they were capable, I would.
If they're capable.
Yeah, but no, if it was out of their league, then absolutely not, because it's their confidence will backtrack. It just, it wouldn't work.
Fine. Georgina, how about you?
Sorry, yeah. Well, of course, you don't make them read, but this happened with a student, a little boy. He was 7, and they had been exposed to, a little bit of writing and words and tagging, like Steve was saying. And so sometimes they misbehave, so I just gave them books to look at the pictures or be distracted. And the kid was actually reading every single line of the book. So you're right, they all advance at different paces and rhythms. Some of them are ready and they can, some of them cannot. But little by little. And it's one thing that maybe, like, I'm doing it like now in the classes with Oxfinity, sometimes depending on the level, maybe the lower ones is like, and we mentioned this last year, like I read and they look at the screen. So then they can actually connect, as Bev was saying, the sounds with the spelling. Because the challenging thing about English, and it's true, it's like one same sound is written in like 10 different ways. And so it's difficult. It's difficult. This is why I think, I don't know, Ramila, we shouldn't wait so long, because it's the relationship between but the letters and the sounds is so, distant sometimes that, the more they dominate the basic spelling at the beginning, I think it's better. But well, this is my experience.
All right. So what happens? But why then? Because this is what happens in schools. Yeah? In schools, this is exactly the presumption that they follow. Yeah, the sooner the better. We start teaching them spelling. Yeah. So why then we have kids with such a bad pronunciation in schools? Why is that? If it's so great, Hannah?
Yeah, I was just going to say, last year I worked in a primary school in Madrid, a bilingual primary school, and it was the same thing, really, that we focused a lot on, I mean, they're trying to change it. They're trying to get the children to speak, but most of it was reading and writing. A lot of it was still reading and writing. And the kids could read, but they didn't really understand what they were reading, and they could barely speak English. And there was a lot of mispronunciation. So I found it, a little bit frustrating. I mean, I don't agree with a lot of the ways a lot of the teaching methods, not just here, but not just in Spain, but also in the UK with children in primary schools anyway. But yeah, it was quite interesting to see, yeah, that they couldn't really speak and they didn't really understand what they were reading. And yeah.
So what would be the right thing to do according to you?
I think we should probably have had more speaking activities. Yeah, listening and speaking.
I think so. I think not until they actually master the verbal expression, they can start reading and writing right. Yeah. I don't know. The sooner the better, Georgina says. Do you agree with that? Or does it come with, does it have to be at the same time or we wait? What do you think, Hannah?
Sorry. Again, I think I get what Georgina's saying about it depends on the individual. Maybe there was 2 or 3 children in the class that were much more advanced and they could manage it really well. But I would say generally at that age, I was working with 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds. I think that that there needed to be more of a focus on the speaking and bringing in gradually the reading.
I absolutely agree
Yeah.
with that actually. With that, yes. First of all, we have to raise the level of the whole group. Yeah, if we have, for instance, in your experience, a group of more kids, 10, maybe 15. First of all, we can't expect only the best ones to start reading. So the whole group has to do well in speaking. After then, they will be ready to read and write. Yeah. Sonia, how about you?
I just wanted to share that according to neuroscientists, so I've been reading and working a lot on that, that know how the brain works and not only about everything, but also about language learning. So the order should be listening and understanding, speaking, reading, and finally writing. So so let's say what they suggest as the brain is coming, since they are little children, and so until 7 or 8, this is the order that we should, let's say, that they learn. So.
Let me insist on that. I agree, but let me insist on that because I think that when we're very ambitious as teachers, we want students to learn everything. But let me insist on that. What happens if we rush the process and when we invert it? What happens when we start teaching English from writing? What happens? What are the consequences? Anyone?
No learning, probably, I would say. So
No
if you don't know this, not learning in a good way. So by the end, of course, that they will learn something, but it's not going to be the normal order for them to acquire new, especially the new language, right? So if you get used to listening to it, that's the example that I have here in Portugal that I always mention. So we start to hear English since we were born. So in the first time, so we listen to English. That's why kids have, let's say, pretty good results in school, because that listening, it's there since the first beginning.
What do you think is the importance of imitating? Do they have to imitate sound patterns first so that they can write them properly later? What do you think?
Me?
Yes?
I can say yes. I like to do that. I think it's important for them to imitate sounds, connecting with observation, because I think that, so especially if with younger kids, we need to show them things like observation, listening, practicing, mimic the sounds, and I think it will be the good way to drive them to writing.
Okay. Who here has been, maybe Georgina, although you're very young, but did you have to learn Latin at school?
No, not me, because I took the international baccalaureate thing. So.
All right. How about you, Paf?
Yes, I did, of course. I did
Yeah.
Greek. I did the linguistic
Branch.
linguistic secondary school. I had a few comments on everything that has been said today. I've got, for example, I've got kids, 5. I have a group of kids that have been with me for 2 years or so. They started with me when they were 5, actually.
Okay.
In classes, they work with me at the moment. And of course, when in the in-person classes, we didn't do any text at all. The first time that I've done some written text, it was last June. And it was just me reading, not they, me.
Yeah.
Very short text. And then we did like comprehension question, but they were so eager, they were so happy, when I showed them that, when we did this written. So I really took it like very, very short and very, very few. So they want to have it. And I think that now in schools in Spain at least, they do the opposite. They tend to like give text, even Spanish. Yeah, they start writing Spanish when they were 3. Now the obvious consequences, which is Anna said, is just like they have interest. It's the mechanic thing for them. So the consequences are that we have now university students that have reading comprehension. Yeah, that's the reality. So we need to just like slow down and have the curiosity, play with the curiosity of the student always. So you can't really give them something that they haven't really asked for. That's my opinion anyway. That's how I work.
This is brilliant. I think it's so reasonable to say that, because eventually your decision to read and them reading comes at the right time. Yeah. So they were ready for it. Of course, they were eager, they were willing, because they were prepared, they were ready. Yeah. But you had spent a lot of time working on them being ready to get to that stage. Yeah. So there is such thing as stages matter. Yeah. Our students have to be ready to master that skill. Yeah. Not only with kids, with adults as well. It would be crazy if we won't expect it from someone at A1, A2 level to start writing and to do it right. Yeah. So, Steve, I know you've raised your hand, but before you was Mari Carmen. Let's see what she thinks.
I just kind of wanted to reiterate something comparing two systems, the Spanish one, the American one, which I had the opportunity to see. And in Spanish, in the Spanish school, I've never seen the steps to the writing process, right? They expect them to write as soon as possible, just like they expect them to play chess. And that way the school is cooler and all that type of selling of product. But at the end of the day, if we're talking serious here and didactic, it's a process, like you very well mentioned at the beginning, which at American schools is something like pre-writing and drafting, revising, the brainstorm, etc. It's actually 5 different steps to follow to do a writing. So how can you expect someone of any age to do that? And we're talking now about kids, obviously, to do all that without knowing what they're talking about, without being able to have a brainstorm of English language, in this case, in their brains. So I think it's imperative to know the language way before you actually think about writing. The result takes a bit longer, but I think the quality is much better.
I can't agree more. In fact, I absolutely agree with everything that you said. Writing is not spelling. Spelling is something. It has to deal with correctness. Writing has to deal with the ability to express ourselves. This is only possible if we can express first verbally and if we're ready. Absolutely. I can't agree more. and that come at a certain stage. Yeah, this cannot be done at A1. A1 spelling, A2 spelling, B1. They can start expressing themselves verbally. Therefore, we can start, fostering that curiosity that Paz was talking about. B2, they're even more ready for that process to happen. They can be engaged. They can be, assigned certain tasks and helped to master the art. Steve wanted to say something.
Yeah, it was just interesting to get that perspective on America. But is the nature of this conversation? We're talking more generally about education systems. But is this part of the process? Are you anticipating somehow at Oxinity we get to the point where we try to do this in class, for instance? I mean, either giving them some writing to do outside of class and bring it to class and paste it into the chat box. I mean, what tends to work quite well, obviously, is peer correction when you've got a group of 3 teenagers or kids at B1 and B2 level, and then if they got the confidence to paste it and then to try to self-correct, and then see how far they get before the teacher has to intervene. But I mean, I kind of find that the Spanish seem to have these kind of like crazy long sentences, that and one of the lessons seems to be to just shorten them, less commas and less clauses. That seems to be the pattern when I've looked at university work. But yeah, to teach writing, as the guys have been suggesting, there is some good practice out there. But yeah, is it something that you're foreseeing we could do in class?
Okay, fine. Yeah, great. We could do in class. Yes. You mentioned B1, B2. I agree with that stage as well. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Georgina, how about you've raised your hand again?
Yeah, well, I completely agree with all of you, and you're right. Maybe lower levels is learning how to spell. And Ramila, despite we do it wrong, I mean, just an anecdote. I just found some notebooks from when I grew up in the States, and there was a bunch of mistakes there, especially because of those sounds, but whatever. But the other thing is learning how to write. And for me, this is what Mari Carmen was saying. There's the creative process and a method that you can apply to develop that writing, and that's what has to be taught. Actually, I like it, and it's what I taught in the B2 levels. And there is a process there, how to first get your ideas down, and then how to organize them, and then how to express them clearly. And that is, in all, a process. And
absolutely.
It's a recipe. And for me, it's easy, of course, because I like to write, but that's the whole different story there. Yeah.
But you like to write because you have mastered the skill of expressing yourself verbally and then in a written way.
I actually learned how to write because I was teaching that. And the other thing, but Steve was saying something that really worked for me in the classes, and the kids adored it. Well, we played a writing game. It was a game, but then they corrected. It was very honest. It was fun. They corrected their colleagues' writings, and they a lot of spelling, of course, a lot of verb tenses, and they really, understood how ideas were being expressed, maybe not effectively, and that really made them learn. I mean, that worked really, and it was okay. They corrected each other, and it was fine. They were actually thankful, and they never took it personal, so that was fine. It worked.
Great. Okay, so before we go to the next meeting, evolution, allow me to recap. I think I'm not going to miss any of your interventions, but what I understood that you're saying is let's respect the process of learning, which starts with understanding, listening, understanding, then being capable of speaking. Not until then we work on their reading and writing skills. Yeah, that's what you said, Mari Carmen, Paz. On top of that, Steve added that happens at B1, B2, as I understood. Yeah, and then only then, not until they're ready, as Beth was saying, we give them or we introduce writing. So let's not force students to read before they're ready to do that, because that will lead to mispronouncing, to lack of interest. Let's wait until that curiosity arises naturally when they're ready, and in that moment then we are going to start reading and asking them to read and assigning them some written tasks. I think that's the recap from today's education. I hope and thank you for all the opinions. Thank you very much. We'll continue. Georgina is clapping. I am as well. Thank you, guys.